Hello everyone, welcome back to Darling Lemons. Today I'll be sewing a wax skirt for a friend, so join me and check it out. Okay, so this is the fabric I'll be working with. It's a wax fabric known for being available in all sorts of colors and patterns. It's a very easy and enjoyable fabric to work with. To prepare my pattern, I'm working with the Vogue 8875 pattern. It contains a dress and a coat pattern. I'll only be using the front skirt section of the dress pattern to make this skirt. I'll be adjusting it quite a bit. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to take my friend's measurements personally, so I'm relying on the measurements she sent, although I did make sure she had information on how to do it correctly. I like to use baking sheets for my patterns like I'm doing here. It's cheaper than buying pattern paper. The only inconvenience is that sometimes the tape struggles to stick due to its non-stick properties, but that's okay, we make do. Once it's in place, I find a few things to weigh it down so it won't move while I trace, and now I can go ahead and trace all the way around with a marker. I'm pretty happy my friend's size was still within the range of sizes in this pattern that I already had. I find it easier than starting from scratch. Of course, that's not the case for everyone. My hat's off to those who can wing it successfully. So here I've reached the top of the skirt. As you can see, I do my best to mark all of the notches as I go. It's easier than coming back to it. It's also very important, especially if you're planning to modify it like I've planned to do. And now I'm just going to continue to trace all the way down. I should mention that I'm adding quite a bit of length to this pattern, so even once I reach the bottom, I will still be adding some more baking sheets to reach that length that I need. Here I've come back to tracing this pleated section, making sure everything is marked as I will be using that in a bit. Here are just a few more markings. Okay, so here is the final pattern, modified and all. What used to be a pencil skirt is now a floor-length A-line skirt pattern. I cut straight down the section where the pleat peaked and closed that pleat by bringing the two sections and those markings closer together. This allowed me to open it up, giving it that flare that I wanted, making good use of this pattern and its sizing. I really had to use a lot of tape to keep those sections together, but now it's ready to be used. So here I cut out two identical pieces on fold, as you can see. Each of them open up to reveal what the skirt will look like, but I'll be setting them aside for now to work on my waistband. Here I'm just cutting off the excess of some of the leftover fabric, making sure I have a straight edge to work with. I just find it easier to do it this way. Then I fold it up and measure the width that I want my waistband to be, and pin it down. Once it's all pinned down and even, I go ahead and cut it along that edge. If you try something similar, don't forget to account for the seam to make sure your waistband ends up with the desired width. Here I'm measuring the length to make sure it's the correct length, and it is, so now I can remove the pins, open it up, and sew right sides together all along the top edge. If you're new to sewing, you might often hear that phrase, sew right sides together. Basically, all fabric has a right and a wrong side. When you sew two pieces of fabric together and the right sides are touching, then that's what we call sewing right sides together. For this part of the waistband, that's what needed to be done. Now here I've taken my two skirt sections and I'm sewing them wrong sides together. My reason for doing this is to achieve a French seam. This method allows me to enjoy nicely finished garments without necessarily having to use a serger. You don't have to worry about frayed fabric inside of your garments with this method, so I like to use it where I can. Here I've almost reached the end of this side. Once I have, I'll be able to open it up and press it. Ironing is a super essential part of sewing and definitely cannot be skipped if you want a lasting result. Here I'm working on that same side, only the right sides are together this time. I made sure to iron it in place before getting back to the machine to make sure the seam stays centered. It's a really simple method. If you can sew a straight line, and if you know how to iron, you can definitely use this method. Trust me, it's worth it. As you can see, this is the inside of the skirt. It's neat, it's clean, and when you turn it over, you see what the exterior will look like. Also, very neat, very clean. Here I've taken the other side of my skirt and I'm measuring the length of the zipper because that is the only section I don't want to sew together with the French seam. It needs to stay open. Once I have that point, I can sew it closed from that point down using the same method I used for the other side. Alright, so now I'm ready to attach the waistband to my skirt. Earlier, I made sure to open it and iron it, and now I can sew it right sides together. You'll notice I didn't bother to pin it down, I just adjust it as I go. I think when pieces are more or less straight, or you have enough practice, it can be easier, and it really depends on the type of fabric you're sewing with too, but wax is pretty easy to work with. I'm excited because I only have a few more things to do to finish this skirt, and then it will be ready. Here I'm almost done with this part of the waistband. Once that's done, I can move on to placing the zipper. Here I'm taking the left side of my skirt and the left side of the zipper. And guys, I just wing it. When I started sewing, I would pin to no end and still couldn't get it right. So I found a method that worked for me. If it can be avoided, I just sew that first section on without using any pins. Once that's done, I take the other side and match it up. I want it to be as even as possible. Here I actually do pin it down all the way, and then I close it to make sure it's even. Now is the time to adjust if needed. So, as you can see, I do my best to respect the seam allowance and keep it the same as the other side. Getting the zipper right may take you some time if it's your first time, but with practice, one day, hopefully you'll start a new project and be able to get it right on the first try, just like I did here. So once it's all pinned down and right where I want it, I can go ahead and sew it down while it's closed here. Once this is done, we'll almost be finished with the zipper, but not quite yet. Here, I'm almost at the end, but you'll notice I can't sew it down all the way. The zipper itself is blocking me. Since I closed the zipper earlier, I have to open it again to be able to sew that last part. Before I even do that last part, I make sure to get rid of any loose threads that will only get in the way later. I prefer to be done with them now. Okay, this is really the last bit that will ensure my zipper does not move and that it's in the right place. Now I'm going to re-sew my zipper, but this time opening up the teeth so that I can sew as close to them as possible. As you can see here, I open it up bit by bit and sew as I go. So the fabric is much closer to the edge this way, and the zipper doesn't show. We really want to make good use of the invisible zipper. If you compare it to the other side, you can still see quite a big chunk of the zipper because I didn't sew so close to the teeth, so I'll do the same on this side. And here I have the finished result for the zipper. As you can see, it's lined up perfectly at the waist and on top as well. Now the next step would be to close the waistband. If you have interfacing, you can add it to your waistbands. It will make them sturdier, but if you don't have any, that's okay. Here I'm folding it over and pinning it down as I go. You want to make sure that the part you fold over completely covers the stitches underneath, and I'll show you why in a bit. So here I am just doing a little section for you to see. Now when I flip it over, you'll see that there is a seam already there. Once you've pinned it all down, that is where you are going to sew, directly into that seam. And because we made sure the fabric behind overlapped, it's going to be sewn in place as we do this. So here I am sewing down the entire waistband. This is what we end up with. Here you can see the exterior. If I turn it around, you'll be able to see inside as well. The stitch we just did is keeping the waistband closed. Here I just folded up and sewed the zipper seam allowance so it's out of the way and we don't have any raw edges. As you can see, it's a lot neater. Now as for the top here, I'll get rid of any loose ends. I want to make sure that the top section of the zipper is hidden away, so I fold it here and I stitch it closed by hand. This will make sure it doesn't come out, and this will also be the finished look inside. Here I'm working on the last part and hemming up the skirt. I'm also leaving quite some length for her to work with here. If in the future she decides to make it longer, she can. So here is the finished result. I really hope that she'll have as much fun wearing it as I did making it. If you tried something similar, please don't hesitate to let me know how it went in the comments. I'd love to hear all about it. So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you're new to my channel, I do have an Instagram, Darling Lemons Crafts. Go ahead and check it out if you want to see more tutorials or videos for inspiration, all that good stuff. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, like, share, and I'll see you again soon.